You are still thinking about that person, right? You told yourself you were over it. Then, at midnight, you check their Instagram profile. Deep and real love. Their presence is so lovely, their hair, their eyes. But what if you are not in love with that person at all? What if you are actually addicted to suffering? Today, we are looking at a story about people who let their past destroy their entire future. By the end of this video, you will question that victim role. You will be more real, my friend. Why do we hold on to the pain of a breakup? Charles Dickens wrote Great Expectations in 1861. And before we get into the story, I need you to understand something. This is not a dusty old novel about Victorian England. This is a precise, uncomfortable explanation of what happens when you decide your heartbreak is your most important personality trait. The characters in this book are people you know. They might be you. Our main character is a boy named Pip. And at the beginning, Pip is genuinely good. He lives with his sister and her husband, a blacksmith named Joe Gargery. Joe is one of those people you meet and trust immediately. Warm, simple, hardworking, completely without pretension. He loves Pip like a son. He is loyal and kind, and he wants nothing from Pip except his presence. Pip's life is not glamorous, but it is real, warm, and there are people in it who truly love him. Then he receives an invitation to visit a woman named Miss Havisham. Why do we hold on to the pain of a breakup? Picture this. You walk into a house with its curtains permanently closed so no daylight can enter. Every clock in the building is stopped at exactly 20 minutes to 9. On the table, there is a wedding cake, rotting so completely that mice are nesting inside. And in the middle of all this sits a woman in a wedding dress turned yellow with age, still wearing one shoe, still wearing her veil, having not changed clothes in decades. This is Miss Havisham. She was abandoned at the altar. Her wedding was planned, the cake was made, the guests were invited, and the groom never showed up. And the moment she received the letter saying he was not coming, she stopped every clock in the house. She refused to let time move forward. She decided if she could freeze that moment of pain, she could stay inside it forever. And staying inside it forever was better than having to push through it and reach the other side. She has been sitting in that rotting dress for decades. And here is what Dickens wants you to understand about Miss Havisham. She is not crazy. She is doing something extremely familiar. She is doing the thing we all do after getting hurt badly, taking it to its absolute extreme. She refuses to move forward. She keeps the wound open on purpose because moving forward requires admitting the thing she lost is truly gone, and she cannot do that. The pain is real, the heartbreak was real, but she turned the pain into a house she lives in, a dress she wears, a stopped clock. And with this, she is poisoning everyone around her. Why do we mistake someone treating us terribly for them being deep and mysterious? Because this is where Pip comes in. He meets Miss Havisham's adopted daughter, a girl named Estella, and Estella is beautiful. Also, from the very first meeting, she is cruel to Pip. She looks at him and sees an ordinary boy, a nobody, and she tells him so. She mocks his hands, mocks his clothes, mocks his way of speaking, and Pip falls completely in love with her. Think about it. The girl openly despises him from day one. She does not pretend to like him and then hurt him. She hurts him instantly, and Pip decides this means she is interesting. He decides her coldness is sophistication. He decides her making him feel bad means there is something wrong with him he needs to fix, and if he fixes it, she will love him, and he believes this love will mean something because it was so hard to get. This is a trap, and we fall into it all the time. What happens when you make suffering your personality instead of moving forward? Miss Havisham raised Estella specifically to break men's hearts. This is not an accident or a side effect of something else. It is the plan. Miss Havisham was destroyed by a man, so she took a little girl and turned her into a weapon designed to destroy men in return. She taught Estella that love is weakness, cruelty is power, and the correct response to being vulnerable is making sure you are always the one holding the knife. Estella was shaped by a woman whose entire life is organized around a stopped clock and a rotting wedding dress. And Pip wants to be worthy of this person. He decides everything about himself is wrong. His clothes are wrong. His manners are wrong. His ambitions are wrong. He is a blacksmith's apprentice, and this is not good enough. He needs to be a gentleman. He needs to be the kind of person Estella would not laugh at. He needs to become someone entirely different, and he is willing to do it. Why do we try to change everything about ourselves to impress people who do not care about us? Because when someone withholds their approval from us, the brain reads it as a challenge rather than a decision. We think, if I can solve this, if I can turn into exactly what they need, then this approval will mean something real. Love you must earn by transforming yourself feels like it will be more real, more permanent, more worth having. Pip wants to change himself because Estella's love will feel like a prize, and then money arrives. He actually has a large amount of money now. A mysterious benefactor sends Pip money and a message saying he has great expectations. He is going to London. He will be a gentleman. His dreams are coming true. He leaves Joe behind. He does not say it to himself like that. He tells himself he will return. He has not changed. The money does not make him different, but it does. Slowly, then rapidly. He goes to London, and when Joe comes to visit, he is embarrassed by him. He is embarrassed by his own past. Because looking directly is too uncomfortable, he starts looking at the people who loved him before the money with a kind of contempt he does not fully recognize in himself. Why does getting the exact lifestyle we dreamed of suddenly feel completely empty? Because the lifestyle was never the main goal. The main goal was Estella's approval, and Estella is still cold. She is in London too, and she continues treating Pip with that specific contempt she was trained to use, and no beautiful clothes, gentlemanly manners, or London address changed the fundamental dynamic between them. In fact, the girl states openly she does not have feelings the way other people do, that she cannot love him, that he must stop loving her. She tells him this clearly and directly, and Pip still continues wanting her to love him. And here is the question that needs to land somewhere uncomfortable. Why do we push away the people offering unconditional love while chasing ghosts? Joe continues being loyal, kind, and completely reliable at home. Joe never asked Pip to be anything other than who he is. Joe's love has no conditions, no coldness, no withheld approval. And Pip made himself unable to receive this love because he decided easy love is not as valuable as love you must fight for. He confused difficulty with value. He confused cruelty with depth. How do we convince ourselves we are loyal when we are actually acting like cowards? Because Pip tells himself a great love story throughout all of this. He is not a social climber abandoning his roots. He is a man in love. He is not embarrassed by Joe. He tells himself he is different now. He is not chasing status. He is chasing Estella. The romantic narrative gives everything a shape, feeling truly better. The reality is he ran away from himself, and the people who knew him before he decided who he was not good enough. And then the revelation. Here is the crazy part. Pip assumed his mysterious benefactor was Miss Havisham. This fits the story he tells. The woman is rich, connected to Estella. It would be a nice, symmetrical thing if she were the person sponsoring his transformation into a man worthy of Estella. He built his entire life on this assumption. What happens when you realize the person you worshipped is actually a broken, manipulative mess? The benefactor is Magwitch, a convict. The man Pip did a small favor for in a graveyard as a child. The man who worked and saved money in Australia for years with the specific goal of making Pip a gentleman, simply because that kindness was the greatest thing anyone ever showed him. The money has nothing to do with Miss Havisham. It has nothing to do with Estella. That grand aristocratic destiny was never real. The entire structure Pip built his self-worth on was a story he made up because the truth was too small, too human, and too real. Miss Havisham is no fairy godmother guiding him toward a worthy love. She is a woman in a rotting dress using him, and Estella as props in her private revenge drama against a man who hurt her decades ago. Estella's coldness is not sophistication or depth. It is damage. Specifically trained, intentionally inflicted damage. Estella does not withhold love from Pip because he is worthless. She withholds it because her ability to give love was taken away. And Miss Havisham realizes what she has done near the end. Standing by the fireplace in her rotting wedding dress, something catches. The dress catches fire. Pip tries to save her by wrapping her in a cloth to smother the flames. And in those final moments, she understands she ruined two young lives with her own pain. Estella, who cannot love. Pip, who wasted his best years chasing someone who was never reachable. All of it serving a grudge against a man who lost relevance to anyone's life decades ago. She built a monument to her own pain and forced other people to live inside it. Why is forgiving yourself harder than forgiving the person who ruined your life? Because forgiving yourself requires you to look at the choices you made. Miss Havisham can blame the man who left her. The pain he caused was real. But the stopped clocks, the rotting cake, and decades spent intentionally poisoning a child's capacity to love, those were choices, her own choices. And accepting this is much harder than maintaining the position of a pure victim. Pip must also experience his own version of this confrontation. He needs to look at how he treated Joe. He needs to look at the snobbery, the shame, and the years spent chasing something empty while neglecting something real. He can blame Miss Havisham for starting it. He can blame the money for complicating things. But he also needs to look at the choices he made himself when nobody was forcing him. If you could clearly see you wasted years of your life on something that was never real, would you finally walk out that door? Pip finally does. Not all at once, and not without a price. The true benefactor, the man who did the actual human kindness starting all these events, Magwitch, dies. The money is lost, those great expectations collapse, and what is left is Pip having to figure out who he is without the story he lived inside. The person saving him is Joe, the person he ran away from, the person whose simple, unconditional love he was ashamed of and then mourned. Joe, who holds no grudges, who accepts him back, making no demands, who remained that exact same warm, honest, stable person while Pip built his fake life and then watched it collapse. The brain treats habits the exact same way regardless of whether they are good or bad for you. Pip turned obsession into a habit. He made longing and improving himself to serve someone unreachable the organizing structure of his days. Stopping this habit is not a decision you make one time. It is a choice you must make repeatedly until a new pattern settles. Miss Havisham turned grief into a habit. She made the stopped clock, the unworn dress, and the uneaten cake a daily ritual to keep the pain fresh. And the ritual turned into life. Grief became personality. There was no longer a Miss Havisham who also grieved. There was grief wearing a woman's face. Let us be honest. Both of these are things we do. Smaller, less dramatic, but in the same structure. That ex we still check on. That rejection we turned into the core story about ourselves. That pain we display to people who will listen, because displaying it makes us feel like the hero of something important. That person we changed ourselves completely for, abandoning our real values, real friends, and real interests for, who then did not stay with us anyway. Let us be honest about something else. We convince ourselves we are looking for closure. We say we need one final conversation, one last message, one more look at their page to finally understand why it ended. We tell ourselves we are gathering information so we can heal. This is a massive lie. You do not want closure. Closure means the story is dead. What you actually want is a reason to keep the wound bleeding. Because an open wound means that person is still part of your life. Letting the scar form is terrifying. A scar means you survived, sure, but it also means they are gone forever, so you keep scratching it. You manufacture new pain out of old memories, because the pain is the last connection you have left. You are doing exactly what Miss Havisham did. Instead of stopping all the clocks in a giant mansion, you are freezing time on a glowing screen in your dark bedroom. You are letting a ghost occupy the exact space where your actual future should be growing. You know this feeling. The massive emptiness of realizing the thing you organized your entire identity around was not what you thought it was. That moment when the story collapses and you have to decide what to do with the ruins? Dickens does not say, heartbreak is unreal. It is real. Miss Havisham's pain was real, Pip's longing was real, and Estella's damage was real. Feelings are always real. But the choices made in reaction to feelings are still choices. Stopped clocks are a choice. A rotting dress is a choice. Those years spent chasing someone, telling you clearly they cannot love you, those are choices too. And the people loving you unconditionally, who were reliable, warm, and by your side, they are still there, or a version of them is still reachable for you. This love feels smaller than that massive romantic obsession. It lacks the same dramatic intensity. It does not make you feel like a character in a story about extraordinary passion. But it is real, and it is there, and it will still be there when you are ready to walk back through that door. Joe was always at the forge, waiting. Who is waiting for you?